Siegel was 20 years old when he walked into a barn outside Boulder, Colorado, sometime across 1969 and 1970, and started sowing. He and a handful of friends had handpicked close to 500 pounds of wild herbs off the Rocky Mountain slopes, and they stitched that harvest by hand into roughly 10,000 muslin tea bags. They sold the whole run to one health food store, the Granary, under the name Mo's 36 Herb Tea. That is the Celestial Seasonings company history, and it is where our flour begins its modern chapter. Picture those bags, coarse muslin, the cheapest cloth they could get, closed with a needle and thread instead of a machine. Picture the herbs too, pulled by hand off the high country above town, carried down in sacks, spread out to dry. That was 1970. A cottage practice, done in a barn, sold to a single shelf. Now look at your own kitchen. Most folks today could not grow, dry and steep their own chamomile if the store closed on a Monday. They could not tell you when to pick the flower head, or how to dry it, or how to tell the true plant from the poison one that grows beside it. That is not a moral failing, friend. Nobody handed you the skill and then blamed you for dropping it. The people who took it from your hands were good at their job, but here's the twist. What replaced your knowing was not a villain in a boardroom. It was a young man in a barn with a good idea and a needle. Let me tell it straight, because the research does not let me tell it any other way. Celestial Seasonings, founded in Boulder across 1969 and 1970, launched Sleepy Time and Red Zinger in 1972. In a few short years it took a home practice, the picking and the drying and the hand sewing, and it turned that practice into a branded grocery commodity. Loose bulk herbs sat in a bin and asked something of you. A boxed tea bag asked nothing. It had a name, a picture, a price, and a place on the supermarket shelf. It won on convenience, and it won on shelf presence, and it won fair. Hear me plainly. There was no ban. Nobody outlawed chamomile. There was no patent block on a flower that has grown wild since before Egypt wrote it down. There was no cover-up, no burned records, no regulator paid to look away. I have the sources in front of me, and not one of them shows a company or a government trying to hide this plant or bury its use. What happened was ordinary, market change, technology change. A cheaper, faster, easier product came along, and the old way of doing it for yourself quietly went to sleep. That is a harder story than a conspiracy, and it is the true one. And here is the thing that gnaws at me, the thing I keep circling back to. That barn. Those 10,000 hand-sewn bags. Mo Siegel himself, 20 years old, needle in hand. Whatever became of that young man and that barn full of muslin? Did the old way die there, or did it just change clothes and move to the front of the store? I am not going to answer that yet. Hold it in your mind. I will come back to Mo Siegel and settle it at the very end, and I think the answer will surprise you, because the plant did not go anywhere. That is what I need you to feel before we go one step further. The chamomile that Mo Siegel's friends pulled off the Rocky Mountains is the same flower your grandfather might have steeped for a sour stomach after supper. The same flower an Egyptian physician wrote down. The same flower a Shaker sister dried flat in the shade. It is still out there, still cheap, still willing. What got expensive was not the flower. What got expensive was the knowing. And the knowing is recoverable, friend. That is the whole reason I sit here. A muslin bag you can sew, a flower you can pick when the white petals bend backward and the yellow centre domes up ripe with oil. A cup you can steep yourself, golden and steaming for pennies, out of a plant you grew from a seed that needs nothing but light to wake up. None of that was taken from you by force. It was simply set down and never picked back up because the store made it easy not to. So we are going to pick it back up. Over the next little while I'm going to walk you backward through the whole long life of this one flower, from a barn in Boulder all the way to a papyrus older than most nations. I'm going to name the people, the years, the texts, and yes, the companies. I'm going to give you the how, the harvest tell, the drying method, and the honest safety warnings, because there are a couple of real ones and I will not hide them from you. But every good story hangs on a single fact you can carry in your pocket. One number that makes the rest of it make sense. The number that tells you what a cup of this actually costs when you stop letting the shelf do the picking for you. Get that number right, and everything else falls into place. So before we count backward from 7, let me hand you the one number that carries this whole story. 21. That is roughly how many cups of tea you can pour from a single pound of dried chamomile flowers. 1 pound bought in bulk runs about $33.70. Do the arithmetic on that, and each golden cup costs you pennies. So I built you a free guide, and I built the whole thing around that one number, 21 cups, how to grow them, how to dry them, how to steep them so the steam curls up amber and honest off a golden cup. The link is waiting for you down below, and it will cost you nothing. Now let me tell you who is talking to you. I am Christopher Marin, and my family has worked this same patch of ground for 7 generations. I keep a leather journal on the shelf behind me, and it is not mine. It belonged to my great-great-grandfather, Samuel Marin. The spine is cracked clean through. The ink has faded to the colour of weak coffee, but his hand is still legible, and he wrote down what worked and what did not, season after season, so his people would never have to guess. I'm reading you from that book tonight. Every claim I make carries a year, a name, or a source, because Samuel would not have it any other way. Here is a taste of where we are headed, and I am telling you plain, I am not resolving these yet. Number 4, John Gerard did not ban chamomile. He just wrote it into English gardens in 1597, in a book so large it became the law of the English herb bed. And number 1, the German Commission E. That is a federal panel of experts, and what they approved between 1984 and 1994 changed how this flower sits on your shelf. But I'm not getting to that until we are at the very bottom of this list. You will have to sit with me a while. I gathered all of this into a book. If you want the whole story, the plants, the people, and the plain steps you can follow, my book Lost Plant Remedies is there for you, and it will outlast this screen. Do me one kindness before we count. Tap subscribe. Not for me. Tap it so the next tired soul searching for the old ways at midnight can actually find them. That is the whole ask. These remedies almost slipped away once, friend. A subscribe just keeps them findable for the folks coming up behind you. Now, number 7. We start in ancient Egypt, about 1550 years before Christ. There is a scroll we call the Ebers Papyrus, and it is one of the oldest medical documents that survives anywhere on this earth. It holds over 800 medical recipes, written down by physicians whose own names nobody preserved, and there, among those 800, is chamomile. This is the first written record we have of the flower used as medicine. Sit with that a second. 3,500 years ago, a physician on the Nile already knew what your grandfather knew, that this little daisy settles a sour stomach. I will not put a price on that one. There is no company here. No brand, no patent, no shelf, no muslin bag. This was temple work and physician work, done long before anyone thought to sell it. You do not stamp a dollar figure on a 3,500-year-old prescription. You just tip your hat to it. The Egyptians wrote it down so it would not be lost, and it was not lost. It came all the way down to the cabinet in your kitchen. Now hold that scroll in your mind and step forward with me, past the fall of the pharaohs, into Rome. Number 6. Around the year 65, a Greek physician marched with the Roman armies. His name was Dioscorides. Between the marches he wrote a work called De Materia Medica, a catalogue of the healing plants of the known world, and in it he set chamomile down for digestive complaints, the very trouble we are talking about tonight. Now here is why that matters, neighbour. That book did not sit on one shelf and rot. It stood as the authoritative reference for Western medicine for roughly 1,500 years. 15 centuries. Physicians from Rome to the Renaissance opened that same text and read that same entry on that same flower. So when you steep your own flowers and watch the water turn gold, you are doing a thing Dioscorides wrote down before London had proper streets. That is not loose folklore. That is a written prescription that outlived the empire that carried it. And he asked nothing for it either. He set it down so the knowledge would carry forward. The same reason Samuel filled his cracked journal, the same reason I am sitting here with you. 2 flowers behind us now, and both of them free, both of them written down by men who wanted you to have them. The Egyptian on his papyrus, the Greek on his scroll, neither one of them sold it. Both of them saved it, and that is the whole pattern of this list. That brings us down to number 5, and a single page of vellum locked in the British Library. That brings us down to number 5, and a single page of vellum locked in the British Library. That page is Harley Manuscript 585. Scholars call the whole book the Lacnunga. It was copied out in the 10th century in Old English by hands we cannot name. Inside it sits the 9 herbs charm, 9 sacred healing herbs spoken over the sick. And there, inked among the 9, is chamomile. The Anglo-Saxons called it mathan. Now think on that a moment. 1,000 years ago, before England had a printing press, somebody wrote this flower down by hand, not as a weed, as one of 9 plants worth saving on costly calf skin. There is no company to blame here, friend. No brand took this one from you. The authority is the manuscript itself, sitting under glass in London. Harley, 585. 9 herbs, and one of them is yours. Here is the safety word, because I will not hand you a plant without it. Chamomile belongs to the Astrachi family, the daisy family. If ragweed or mugwort already sets you sneezing, this flower can cross that same line. That is not an old wives' worry. An ELISA inhibition study showed the molecular cross-reactivity between chamomile extract and ragweed and mugwort proteins. Documented case reports run as far as anaphylaxis, so if you react to ragweed, you go slow and you ask your doctor first. Money on this one is honest and short. There is no price tag on a charm sung over vellum. Your grandfather did not buy this. He inherited it, same as you. And that inheritance walks straight into the English garden, which carries us to number 4. Number 4 is John Gerard, the year 1597. Gerard was a London herbalist. In 1597 he published the Herbal, or General History of Plants. It was one of the great English plant books of its age. He set chamomile down growing in English gardens, and he set down its smell, like apples. That is the turning point. Chamomile stopped being a charm word and became a cultivated crop, cemented in the English herbal canon by a named man in a named book. Now let me be honest with you, the way an old grower has to be. There are 2 chamomiles, and folks mix them up all the time. German chamomile is the tea plant. It is an annual, grown from seed, harvested for its flower heads in one season. Roman chamomile is a low, spreading perennial. That is the walking lawn, bred to be trodden, not steeped. Same family, 2 different plants. When we talk about the flower in your tea cabinet, we mean the German kind. Here is the practical tell, and it is Gerard's own kind of observation. Slice a true chamomile flower head in half. You will see a hollow cone-shaped centre rising up under the petals, and crush it. It smells of apples. That is how growers have always known it. Now the safety aside on this one, there is a look-alike called stinking mayweed, Anthemis cotyla. It wears the same little white petals and finely divided ferny foliage. But crush it between your fingers and it does not smell of apples. It smells foul and fetid. It is documented as toxic to dogs, cats, horses and poultry. So you go by the nose. Apples you keep. Foul you throw out. Money on Gerard is NA. No figure to give you and I will not invent one. A 1597 book put a name to your garden flower, and that naming was worth more than a price. Which brings us down to number 3, and the first people on this soil to build a real business out of drying herbs. Number 3 moves us across the ocean to Mount Lebanon, New York in the 1820s. The Shaker community there began an herb trade in the 1820s, and by around 1850 it peaked. Mount Lebanon and the Watervliet community together built the first large-scale American medicinal herb business. They turned herb growing, drying and extraction into a professional trade, not a home garden habit. They ran it under the Shaker Seed Company name, and their reputation crossed the country. Here is the authority in hard numbers. The 1851 Shaker catalogue listed 356 medicinal herbs. At its peak, the community produced roughly £100,000 of dried herbs a year. Read that twice. £100,000 dried by hand in a single year, by a religious community that owned no machines like ours, and their method is the how-to I want you to keep because it still works in your kitchen. Air dry your cut herb flat. Single layer, in the shade, out of direct sun, until it is crisp and papery. Do not rush it in the oven and do not stack it deep. Then pack it away from moisture and light. The Shakers use small paper folders and boxed them in wooden display cases. You can use a clean jar with a tight lid, kept in a dark cupboard. Light and damp are what steal the medicine out of a flower. Money on the Shakers is honest NA. I found no modern price to hang on their trade, so I will not pretend one for you. What your grandfather would have taken from these people is not a dollar figure. It is the discipline. Grow it, dry it flat and slow, store it dark, and you carry your own pantry through the winter without asking a single company for permission. That is number 3. A charm on vellum at 5, a named herbalist's book at 4, and at 3 the plain, hard-working Shakers who proved this flour could feed a livelihood, not just a teacup. Every one of those was still herbs in a barn, or a garden, or a book, grown, picked, and dried by the same hands that used them. Number 2 is where those hand-sewn muslin bags come back, and where a Boulder barn changed your grocery aisle for good. Number 2 is where those hand-sewn muslin bags come back, and where a Boulder barn changed your grocery aisle for good. In 1969, Mo Siegel and a few friends picked 500 pounds of wild herbs. They sewed them into roughly 10,000 muslin bags by hand inside that barn. They sold every one to a single health food store, the granary. That was the whole company, a barn, a needle, and a shelf. Then 1972 came. Siegel took a trip to Mexico. He met the linden flower there, Tilia, and he came home and launched Sleepy Time. That is the year the thing turned, friend. Chamomile stopped being a jar on your grandmother's shelf and became a box on a national aisle. Celestial Seasonings did not ban your homegrown flour, they just beat it on convenience. A branded box won on shelf presence, and the home practice quietly stepped aside. Here is the honest money on that. A boxed commercial tea is the convenience premium. You are paying for the box, the bag, the truck, and the name. I wanted to give you the exact shelf price of a national brand today, and I could not source it clean. So I will not guess one on air. I will only tell you the shape of it. You pay more for the convenience, and you always have. Now, number 1. This is the deepest one, so stay with me. For most of this list, chamomile carried only its reputation. Then the German Commission E, a federal expert committee, published its monographs between 1984 and 1994. They approved chamomile flour for symptomatic gastrointestinal complaints, spasms, epigastric distension, flatulence. A government body wrote the folk use down as approved. Then came the trial. In 2015, researchers gave chamomile drops, carrying bisabolol and chamazoline, to 45 patients with irritable bowel syndrome. 4 weeks. They found a statistically significant reduction in symptoms at p less than 0.001. Here's the smoking gun. Not a cure, friend. I will never tell you it cures anything. Short-term relief of minor upset measured and written down. That is all, and that's plenty. So let me hand you the whole thing, seed to cup, so shallow, a 1/4 inch at most, or scatter right on the surface, because the seed needs light to wake. Keep it moist. It sprouts in 7 to 14 days when the soil sits at 55 to 65 degrees. Thin your seedlings to 4 to 6 inches apart. You get first flowers in 6 to 8 weeks, and full flowering in 60 to 90 days. Here is the tell your grandfather knew. Pick when the white petals reflex, bending backward off the centre, and the yellow middle domes up high. That backward bend is the plant telling you the oil has peaked. And if you want the grower's proof, slice 1 flower head clean in half. A true chamomile receptacle is hollow, a little cone with nothing inside. That hollow cone is how you know you have the real one. Dry the heads flat, single layer in shade, 3 to 5 days, or a dehydrator at 95 to 100 degrees. Store airtight and opaque. To brew, steep 2 to 3 grams, 1 to 2 heaping teaspoons, in 8 ounces just off the boil. Keep it covered, 5 to 10 minutes, strain. Now the asides, because I owe you the whole truth. If you react to ragweed or mugwort, be careful. There are documented cross-reactions, and anaphylaxis has happened. There is one case report of a 70-year-old woman on warfarin who was hospitalized with internal hemorrhages after using chamomile tea and lotion together. One report plus a coumarin mechanism. Not established, but I will not hide it from you. The NCCIH also notes a preliminary drop in oral contraceptive effectiveness. Pregnancy safety is unresolved, so I will not call it safe. For most adults, the NCCIH calls tea amounts likely safe. The money neighbour is plain. Bulk dried flowers run about $33.70 a pound, and a pound gives you around 21 cups. A seed packet costs a few dollars and returns many multiples of itself. I will not hand you $1 per year savings figure, because no one sourced one honestly, and I will not invent numbers for you. So here is your first step tonight. Buy 1 packet of German chamomile seed and set it by the window where the light falls. Now tell me one thing in the comments. Which flower do you still have on your shelf right now? The one your people kept, and what did they keep it for? The one that gets the most comments is the one I build next. If your cabinet is empty, that is not a failing. They spent decades and real money making the box easier than the garden. You were busy living. But the knowing was never lost. It was written down in a papyrus, in a charm, in a Shaker ledger, and now it is back in your hands where it started. And that barn in Boulder, I told you I would come back to it. Those 10,000 hand-sewn bags in one small store became a name in every grocery in the country. Mo Siegel proved a homestead skill could feed a nation. The lesson is not that he won the aisle. The lesson is that the flour was always yours first, and it still is. Next time, we follow the Shaker herb trade off its cliff. Mount Lebanon listed 356 medicinal herbs and dried £100,000 a year at its peak around 1850. Then it fell away. I want to show you what replaced those seed papers, who bought the fields, and which 3 healing plants nearly vanished with them. Bring your notebook. If this helped you, subscribe. Not for me. Do it so the next person searching for what their grandmother knew finds it before the knowing slips any further. That is the only reason I ask. Keep the old ways. They kept us.